So think of it as a smaller version of the space shuttle, the similar form factor. But the important thing is we don't have wings. So an important concept that our spacecraft or space plane is based on is that it is a lifting body space plane. What that means is the shape of the spacecraft itself helps it to generate lift as it travels through the Earth's atmosphere without the use of wings. And the reason we went with this decision of not having wings on our space plane is because we wanted to be able to take advantage of the maximum amount of available volume inside the launch vehicle that takes us to space.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Speciale Focus, brought to you by Speciale Invest, a leading early-stage deep tech VC firm in India. I'm Hariarakli, and in this episode, I bring you a conversation with three entrepreneurs who are in the thick of India's private space tech startup revolution. Aravind IB, Vishal Reddy, and former Indian Navy fighter pilot Abhijit Bhutre are co-founders of Inbound Aerospace, a startup that is developing a spacecraft capable of multiple re-entry missions to bring customers access to microgravity in low Earth orbits. The trio's vision rests on two technical pillars: developing re-entry technology that can protect delicate payloads through extreme temperatures, and designing a reusable spacecraft that withstands multiple return journeys while maximizing the volume available to customers. What began as frustration during Arvind's doctoral research at IIT Madras, extracting clean experimental data from 2-second drop tower sessions, evolved into a concrete problem. Researchers worldwide cannot easily access sustained microgravity, despite decades of knowledge about what it enables. Pharmaceutical crystals grow larger and purer in weightlessness. Bioprinters can construct tissue scaffolds without structural supports. Semiconductor materials reach superior purity. Yet, access remains tightly rationed and expensive through the International Space Station, with waiting lists stretching years and limited return capacity. In this episode, the three entrepreneurs explain their spacecraft design, a lifting body plane without wings that maximizes internal volume, and their commercial strategy, positioning Inbound Aerospace as a logistics service for microgravity research. They discuss how a combination of improving launch economics, new Indian space policies, and international demand for manufacturing capabilities has created an opening for this venture. They also speak about some of the challenges and even pleasant surprises they've encountered building a space technology startup from India. And they hope that one day Inbound will also be a part of human spaceflight programs. Arvind, Captain Abhijit, Vishal, thank you for making time for this. Welcome to Specially Focus podcast. Really looking forward to bringing our audience some insights into the work you all are doing, building a re-entry vehicle, and in the future you'll enable microgravity, maybe even advanced manufacturing and experiments and so on. And in fact, let's start with that. If you can start us off with a brief backgrounder of the story of starting up of Inbound Aerospace. How did the three of you come up with this idea? And then let's go from there.
Yeah, sure, Honey. I think Arvind would be a good starting point in terms of where this idea originated from. I think once he starts, we can kind of build up on the idea of how we three of us met and how the idea developed into a product. So I'll let Arvind start off from his journey because his journey is the first in our story.
Yeah. Okay. So I was doing my PhD in IIT Madras with Professor Satya Chakravarti, and this was in the National Center for Combustion Research and Development. And we have a facility known as Microgravity Drop Tower facility, which is a only facility in India which can actually recreate few seconds of weightlessness. Up to 2 seconds, it can recreate, simulate, and So I was actually volunteering the experiments conducted there during the PhD time. My PhD topic was on liquid rocket engines, but this was during that time. And so we were facing challenges. Mostly from the data processing side, I was looking at the results of these experiments. But we were facing challenges in getting clean experimental data results from the experiments, because it is only 2 seconds and followed by, so the tower is basically, you have a payload which is falling from a 30-meter height, and it takes 10 seconds to reach from the 30-meter top to the bottom, and in the final 2 seconds is where you actually experiences weightlessness, and it goes and hits in an airbag right after this 2 seconds. So so that means there is a 2 seconds of weightlessness followed by a very sudden shock, because it goes and impacts the airbag. That is how it is being captured, the payload. Because of this less time, we were not sure whether the experiments reached steady state. Even in the 2 seconds itself, we were not sure whether it was this. So it was difficult to get clean experiments. So that is where I started looking at, why can't we actually get longer duration of zero gravity, or why can't we turn off gravity for longer durations? So looking into that made me understood that the only place where you can do extended duration of zero gravity experiment is in the International Space Station. And there were certain limitations with the current way it is being done. This could be appreciated with the current way, like Sunita Williams had to stay there for an extended duration because of absence of return vehicles. And this is the case from the beginning for any payload that is flown to the International Space Station, because there is no return vehicles as frequent. So it is all based on NASA schedule. Every 4 months or every 6 months is when one vehicle comes back. So that is only when you can actually get back the experiments back. So, and typically to get a slot also, it takes around 2 to 3 years. So the entire cycle of getting a slot on the experiment, flying it to it, and getting back the results lasts more than 5 to 6 years now. This is actually a bottleneck currently. So how do you actually quickly iterate on, and you get to do only one test, and this is very, very expensive also currently, because of the human astronaut time is also involved in this one. So that astronaut need to be part of this one during that. So these are the problems that were identified while looking at this area. So the starting point was, okay, the longer duration can be only done in International Space Station. Also, this was the time when also I was exposed to a new emerging market that is coming, which is known as in-space manufacturing, which is products that can be made only in zero gravity environment or weightlessness environment, which is in space, but have applications back on Earth. So the key missing link in that was the re-entry capability, on-demand return re-entry capability was missing in that. So my background was on the space, mostly PhD was in propulsion. And before PhD, during BTech, final year project was in hypersonic aerodynamics at VSSC. And so this was actually a natural direction that I went, that I also wanted to look. And this was also partly influenced by seeing the early days of Agnikul, Galaxy, E-Plane, Aerospace, all these companies, many of them special portfolio companies at NCCRD. So we were in the same, almost in the next room. There were Agnikul guys. In this room, there will be Professor Satya's student. So, and we were sharing many of the equipments also. The early days. So this also was a reason that inspired me to take into this. So I started attending all this e-cell events in IIT Madras towards the end of the PhD. And then I got applied for this pre-incubation program, which is there in IIT Madras. They give you funding support, shared workspace, and they give you visibility to the investor. So this was actually happening. This was in August 2022. I got selected, and then during the first 1 year, I was actually more refining the solution. That will be the more better way to put it on, and learning more about the different subsystems that comes. So if you have to build a re-entry vehicle, that means you need to solve for a lot of different departments in terms of aerodynamics, propulsion, guidance, the structures, mission design. And how do you actually evolve a business case for this also was also looked at to it. And then I met, there was one of the conferences also you started going. Then I met Abhijit. This was in around 2023, and then 2023 second half to 2024 we were actually talking. And then towards the end of 2023 is when I actually reached out to Vishal. I had known Vishal long back, more than 10 years now. And that is when he was, I thinking that he was in the US. He was in Tesla during that time, interning there. And I was thinking he was still there. And then I thought I should reach out to him and see if he can come on board. So that is how actually, then January onwards, all three were there. That is how it started actually. And then we were in Nirman, which is the pre-incubator of IIT Madras. And then January, 2024, October, November time, we got actually incubated. And then we are going through the incorporation through the IIT Madras incubation cell. So that is how actually we are now.
So picking up just where Arvind left, it was the summer of 23, and it was a conscious decision of voluntary retiring from Indian Navy, being a fighter pilot and a very strong astronaut candidate, and then trying to get into the space domain in a private capacity. And that's the time when the government also opened up a lot of opportunities for private players. And with that focus, I started attending some space conferences, and that's the time during the international conference at Bangalore, I happened to meet Arvind. And like he was mentioning, it was, kind of a serendipity moment wherein I'm trying to bounce off ideas of future space tourism, which I'm very convinced will happen in 7 to 8 years from now. And here was Arvind, who had already worked on this seed idea, and he had kind of conceptualized a platform which is capable of re entry. And that's when I saw some great synergies between the two of us, and then the timelines he brought out to you. That's how this whole thing began. And at the end of it, I'm very happy that we all together, and very soon, Vishal, who was known to Arvind before, he also joined us. And it was like the complete triangle was, made, and it was great going from there onwards. And that has been the start point. And over a period of time, participating in a lot of events and promoting the company, and slowly happened to meet Vishesh, who was like one of the first investors we spoke to. And hats off to him and his vision that he supported us right through the beginning, initial days, that is mid 2024, right till the investment came through. So it's been a wonderful journey overall from there. Vishal, if you want to add on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to give you some more side of my, or to tell you more about my side of the story, I think it was always clear to me that I would come back to India. I don't think I ever saw a future where I was going to settle down in the US. I think I mean, we're going to study there at a prestigious university like Columbia and doing my master's there. I think all my relatives who are in the US, I have a lot of relatives, probably more in the US than I have in India. I think probably everyone thought, and maybe I myself thought that if I was going there to study, I would probably settle down there and follow your standard route, which is set in stone, wherein you go there to study, go on a student visa, then shift to an H-1B visa, which is their work visa, and then after that you join the queue to become a US citizen. This is what all the relatives who had gone before me had followed, and kind of expected that I would do the same. But I when I went there, I think the first time I visited in 2013, somehow the decision was clear to me that this is not a place that I want to settle down. The exact reasons could be many, but I will not get into all of those. But when I went again for my master's, I think it was with an open mind of let me try to convince myself if there's actually a reason to stay here, settle down in the US. I think over 2 years, 2.5 years, I did not find that reason to settle down, and then decided that I would come back. And I think that was around in 2023, early 2024. And that was around the same time that Arvind had reached out. So I didn't come back with a specific plan. I thought I would come back and figure out something. But I think by chance, Arvind had happened to reach out at the same time. And it was one of those opportunities where you think that the you would it is too good to pass up upon. When Arvind explained this idea to me the first time, I think I understood about 5% of it. So today, after 2 years, I'm probably at 8%. I like to say because it's continuously evolving problem. There's so many things we don't know and we're learning on a daily basis. But yeah, I think that's a good way to tell what my background is. And interestingly, Arvind mentioned that we go back about 7-8 years here. So the context behind that is my mother happens to teach yoga here at IIT Madras. She's been teaching here since about 2015-16. Arvind, during his PhD, has been one of the first batch of students in that yoga classes, and I'm happy that I met Arvind because of these yoga classes. So I have to credit the usually non-credited part of the IIT Madras entrepreneurial ecosystem for being able to meet Arvind. So yeah, I guess it's a good background about my story. Yeah.
So you'll forgive any listeners who might be visualizing, a Padmasana in zero gravity.
The interesting thing, Hari, is Arvind probably practiced a lot of yoga during his PhD, and I am guilty of not doing as much yoga as my mom expects that I should be doing. But right now, out of the three of us, Abhijit practices the most yoga, so that's very interesting. Yeah.
So Hari, when we were together at Dubai, me and Vishal, so Vishal would dread these early mornings, okay, because then I would make him sit in funny positions and drink warm water and get into all the yoga positions. So he would really curse me in the morning that, "Why, what are you doing this to me early morning?" Then that's part of the yoga practices.
I think anyone would find it difficult to match the discipline of a fighter pilot. So
Yes.
probably understandable. Very nice. So let's talk about Inbound Aerospace, the startup you all are now building. Can you give us a sense of how you came up with the name to begin with?
Oh, okay. So I was looking at, so we are bringing back stuff from space or from this thing. So inbound, the word meaning was looking like, if you just Google it, you will say like returning back to the point of departure. So if you just zoom out yourself and go beyond, looking beyond Earth itself, you are still going back. We will get back from space back to Earth. So the point of origin is anyway Earth. So if you look from that scale, is what I felt that okay, that would be a good name for things. So anything that is, we will ensure that you returns back from space, and we also will bring back the benefits of space back to Earth. So the word meaning itself also actually the natural choice of going with it.
And the interesting thing here is that Arvind's last name is IB. He doesn't want me to say this, but the joke here is inbound stands for IB. It's the full form of IB, but yeah, he doesn't like me saying that. But yeah, that's a separate story. Yeah.
Arvind involved.
Okay, cool. So you all have already mentioned a re-entry vehicle or technology. Can you all talk about this a bit more? How are you visualizing? I mean, eventually, when you have a product, is this a spacecraft that will do multiple re-entry missions and so on? Just walk us through your vision on this.
Yeah, sure, Hari. Yeah, so in terms of re-entry itself, I mean, for some context, I mean, most satellites that you send to space today, I think most people, when you mention a satellite, they'll probably visualize a cube-shaped satellite with solar panels and some communication modules and maybe some payload inside. But when you think of most of the majority of these satellites that go to space today, they don't have the capability to come back to Earth. So what happens is our Earth's atmosphere acts as a natural garbage incinerator. So any satellite towards the end of its life, what they do is they gradually reduce its altitude and let it burn as it enters the Earth's atmosphere. This happens because it's coming back at orbital speeds, which are around 25,000 kilometers per hour. And when the object traveling at those speeds comes into contact with the Earth's atmosphere, because of the high drag and friction experience between the spacecraft and the satellite or spacecraft in the Earth's atmosphere, they tend to experience very high heating loads, somewhere in the region of 1,500 to 2,000 degrees Celsius, and this tends to disintegrate most of the parts or components of a satellite. There might be some incidents you might have seen in the news where a few of these components do survive these high temperatures and conditions during re-entry and end up landing on the ground. But yeah, this is the premise of where we come in, and we wanted to say, hey, we wanted to bring that capability to capability of being able to bring back something from space, because while it has been in existence since the 1960s when the Cold War and the space race started, it's still not been as easy for someone on the ground like you or me or a big company to bring something back from space. So, I mean, even if you take the example of ISRO, wherein with our shoestring budget, we've kind of matched other larger space agencies in terms of launch capability. That is, taking something from ground to space. We've not really had the capability, apart from a single mission in 2007, to bring something back from space on a regular basis. So that's where we wanted to come in and say, hey, if we're solving for this capability and we want to do it on a regular basis. So when we talk about our spacecraft, we can say spacecraft, we can say satellite, there are multiple terms, all of them are correct. A satellite is anything which orbits around the Earth, and the spacecraft is a craft which goes to space. So all of these are correct terms. But to give you a more visual picture of the form factor of our satellite or spacecraft, think of it more like a space plane. So I think a good example of how it looks like would be the space shuttle, which existed a couple of decades ago. It was decommissioned in 2011. Some of people might know it as the spacecraft which took Kalpana Chawla to space. So think of it as a smaller version of the space shuttle, the similar form factor. But the important thing is we don't have wings. So an important concept that our spacecraft or space plane is based on is that it is a lifting body space plane. What that means is the shape of the spacecraft itself helps it to generate lift as it travels through the Earth's atmosphere without the use of wings. And the reason we went with this decision of not having wings on our space plane is because we wanted to be able to take advantage of the maximum amount of available volume inside the launch vehicle that takes us to space. So if you imagine a winged spacecraft sitting inside the confines of a launch vehicle, you can see that a lot of volume is wasted because these wings are kind of protruding out the sides of the spacecraft, and that doesn't allow you to take full advantage of. That doesn't allow customers to take full advantage of the volume that is available on the launch vehicle. So, end of the day, the money that the number of customers that you can carry equals the amount of revenue you can generate. So, we kind of wanted to maximize the volume we could carry, and we decided to not have wings on our space plane. And I guess to answer your question about re-entry and how regular we want to do it, with our first, the final version of our spacecraft, we are looking to target at least 10 re-entry missions with a single structure of our spacecraft. So this spacecraft spaceplane will essentially be an internal structure which will be covered by a thermal protection system. So after each re-entry mission, when it's coming back at those high speeds, when it experiences those higher temperatures, there will be some minimal damage on the external surface of this thermal protection system. So we might have to do a little bit of refurbishment every mission, but we hope to use that same structure at least 10 times before we have to dispose of it, or maybe we can reuse some of its parts. But yeah, I think that's a good example of how many times we're looking to use our space plane. Yeah.
What is the attraction or significance of being able to make something in zero gravity or very low gravity conditions?
So because that environment cannot be created here. That is the most basic thing, because you cannot create zero gravity in Earth for longer duration. And many products are actually, this environment enables to produce new products which are good, which finds use cases back on Earth actually. So for example, it could be newer pharmaceutical drugs, compounds that could be made in this environment. Definitely they have back on Earth, and it is shown by the research conducted over earlier space station missions that you can actually produce much more larger crystals, and the size range is actually very narrow. That means almost all the crystals will have exactly similar size. So this is important for pharma applications, because you can exactly predict the potency of the drug. What is the effect of the drug? You can exactly model that, and then the larger structure size of the crystal also enables you to study the structure in more detail. That enables you to tailor make it to attack a particular target molecule. Very, very attractive for chemo drugs, And this is from the pharma side. If you could look at, then there could be other application like high purity crystals for in optical applications like optical crystals, or could be fiber optics applications where you could look at much higher bandwidth than what it can be made by the silica based thing. The material is CBLAN as a alloy of different compounds mixed, and then the other is in the semiconductor area where wide band gap semiconductors, very very high purity crystals could also be made. Basically, the overall basic physics in all these three is when you turn off gravity, there is no sedimentation. That is, heavier substance don't settle down in a lighter medium in zero gravity. Then there is no buoyancy effect. That means there is no upward push that a denser substance exerted onto a lighter substance. And then there is no natural convection, which is on account of when there is a density difference in account of temperature difference. That means that the lighter hot surface doesn't want to go to the top, and the cool dense one doesn't want to go to the bottom. This sets up a current, which is what we see in when we boil water. This also is not there. So only way information when you heat something in a liquid in zero gravity is through molecular diffusion. So these three are the basic things, and there are many processes which are actually dependent on these three, or these three phenomena affect the processes actually happening. So it could be crystallization is a very good example of that. Crystallization could be from a solution or could be from a vapor. So from a solution could be of this pharmaceutical drug compounds. It could be from a vapor for diamond applications, core, semiconductor. So all this actually is leading to better crystallization is what actually the thing. So it could be applications from any area. And the next area could be on 3D bioprinting, where currently bioprinting requires support structure. If you are able to do in Earth, if when you make these structures which are single cell thickness, it will collapse in its own weight if it's not having any support structure. If you are to do this on Earth. But the problem is, if you add a support structure, when the part that needs to be printed becomes more complex, you cannot remove the support structure without affecting the part itself. So the community is looking at, why don't we completely eliminate the support structure? And the only place where you can achieve this is a zero gravity environment. So you don't have to actually worry about the support structure, and still while printing it will not collapse in its own weight, because there is no concept of weight here. So this environment enables us to make scaffold free 3D bioprinting possible. That is why the experiment is also running. So there are instances of 3D bioprinted human heart tissue and knee meniscus made in the International Space Station. So this is the ultimate aim of this community is like, let's say a patient is waiting for an organ. He can actually take the stem cells from the patient and get into a zero gravity environment and print the organ, and can be brought back and transplant it, nurture it so that it cultures, and while you can actually bring back and transplant it to the patient, so that the patient will never reject it because it's from his own stem cells. And there is no point, like there is no question of waiting for an organ. You only immediately you can actually print the organ and get it. So these are the advantages, and better other examples like could be diamond crystals, could be single walled carbon nanotubes, artificial retinas. All these processes depend on some or another manner in the three major things: sedimentation, buoyancy, or natural convection affects these processes while they are done on Earth. So these could be, it's found that they are found better in the zero gravity environment. So that's the overall demand in purely the microgravity research and in space manufacturing area.
And also, Hari, what Arvind was mentioning, that this research has been done on the ISS over the last 2.5 decades, but for some reason, it never got a commercial flavor. Primarily because of the launch cost being so exorbitant and prohibitive. Most of this research was again in bits and pieces over the years. But now, what is changing the landscape with the launch costs reducing drastically and fallen over 90% in the last 15 to 20 years, it becomes more commercially viable to explore these options in microgravity and some of the fields which Arvind mentioned. And to add on to that, agriculture is also becoming very, very important field where a lot of research is happening, and lot many companies, agri-based derivatives, basically the metabolic pathways of how agricultural or food routines can develop. That's also a completely new field which is developing very soon. In fact, one of our experiment to the ISS by our astronaut was also based upon the seed culture and how seeds behave in microgravity. So that's the like immense amount of opportunities which are there here.
Yeah, I mean, these are all like important to understand the benefits of this environment. But I think the other side of why what we're building is significant is because it has not been as easy to access this kind of environment. So, you know that there is a new environment, you know that there are some benefits, but it's still so difficult for everyone to access it. So that's what we're trying to do in terms of making it easier for everyone to access this unique environment. I mean, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but I like to think of it as maybe when the microscope was invented, it gave you a new way to look at things which are otherwise impossible to look at without the microscope itself. So the zero gravity environment gives you a unique way of doing things and looking at things which is otherwise impossible to do in a Earth gravity environment. So we're essentially there's one microscope now that everybody is sharing, and which is the International Space Station. So we're trying to get more microscopes out there into the world and make it much cheaper for everyone. But yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now, specific to your company, can you talk about where you are at? What all have you already done, and what are some of the things that you have to now develop and build next?
Yeah. So the development of different subsystems of the spacecraft are currently being done. It is including aerodynamics, structures, guidance, navigation control, avionics, propulsion, mission design, and mechanisms. So in all these areas are the current work happening, and the current some of them are in the design, some of them are in the testing phases, some are in the simulation phases. So this is the current work, and this current funding that we raised from during for the pre-seed is actually taking us to completing the critical design review or the detailed design of the vehicle, so that with the next funding we would be able to build the full integrated prototype. So now individually these subsystems are qualified and matured, and the technology for this is de-risked, and that is the current phase we are on in.
I know that there are a lot of variables, but can you give us a sense of a rough timetable when you would say your first launch ready spacecraft would be?
Yeah, we actually building of the first prototype will actually begin in 2027, and we are looking at uh, uh, 2028 launch is what actually we're looking at. Mid 2026 to mid 2027 is where the prototyping and testing will be happening. It will lead into a qualification model, and then it will go into the flight model, which is the one that we intend to launch in 2028.
And what we are launching in 2028 is essentially a prototype version. I mean, we say prototype, it is still a full-fledged spacecraft with all the subsystems that we are sending to space, but it is not the final version of our spacecraft. So after this, we will have a larger version of our spacecraft with the maximum customer payload that we're able to have. But essentially, we're calling it the minimum viable product or the MVP mission here because it's the smallest possible spacecraft with the minimum number of subsystems that we're able to pack to prove the two hardest technological challenges. So the one is surviving the high temperatures during re-entry, so ensuring that the spacecraft comes back in one piece. And then the second aspect is ensuring that it's able to guide itself autonomously to a location of our choice accurately. So these two things, the minimum number of subsystems required to prove these two important milestones is what we are looking to do in 2028.
Mm. And how long the spacecraft stays in orbit, etc., would that depend more on what your customers require?
Yes, exactly.
What we have seen over the last many experiments and which has been documented is that typical experiments would last anywhere between 14 days to 21 days. And the idea of creating a spaceplane like this of these dimensions is to have time in orbit or going up to close to 2 months, which is about 8 weeks. So that gives us enough window of opportunity for doing multiple experiments if need be. But at the same time, if there is a particular requirement of having longish experiments, then we can do that also. But as of now, we don't expect the any one particular experiment to cross more than 8 to 10 weeks. And we can also stay much longer in orbit, but then that would entail carrying much more propulsion for the set duration of the mission. Otherwise, present in our present design, 2 months of orbit time is what we are targeting, and then we can deorbit.
Yeah, but to a large extent, if a longest duration requesting customer says that only 2 weeks is the requirement, then there's no reason for us to extend our mission duration beyond that 2 weeks. But we'll also have to have customers. Let's say a customer whose experiment only runs for a day is sharing the payload volume with a customer who needs his experiment to run for 2 months. We have to make sure when we're packing these payloads and we're booking these launches and re-entries that these two customers are okay being with each other, in the sense that the customer whose experiment only takes 1 day is okay with waiting for 2 months for the other experiments to be completed before we bring them back. So we have to see how we can make that happen. Yeah.
And typically, will it be enough to send a spacecraft to what you all call low Earth orbits?
Yes, yes. In terms of the microgravity environment that we're enabling, it doesn't make a difference if whether we're at 350 kilometers or at 500 kilometers. The environment that we're able to enable is essentially the quality of environment that we're able to enable is essentially unchanged as you move to higher and higher orbit. So the reason we've restricted ourselves to a low Earth orbit is because the cheapest transport option to take us there is currently going to the low Earth orbit. So the train or bus that we're hitching is happens to go to that destination. So we're happy to go there to enable that kind of environment. But in the future, if you tell me that the cheapest ride is going to a different orbit, then that's something probably that we can consider as well.
When you're ready for commercial operations, can you give us a sense of what the business model will be like, the way you're envisioning it as of today?
Yeah. So you can think of our commercial operations like immediately after our starting immediately after our MVP mission. So sometime in that 2029 timeframe is when we're looking to launch the first commercial version of our spacecraft. And in terms of the business model itself, I think Abhijit and Arvind mentioned that different mission durations would come into factor here. But I think of us as being essentially a logistics partner, right? So whether we are a shipping company or an aeroplane logistics company, I think the three important factors that would come into play here are the mass of the customer payload, the volume of the customer payload, the volume that it occupies, and the orbiting duration requirement. So we would kind of want to take these three factors into play when pricing customer payloads. So if they were to occupy the entire volume, leaving some mass capability, still leaving some mass capacity, we still have to charge them the entire price for occupying the entire volume of our spacecraft. But yeah, these are three important factors that we would take into consideration to price payloads. And the other big important factor that would influence our pricing itself is the cost that we are paying to the launch vehicle partner, someone like ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, or SpaceX, to use their particular launch vehicle to go to space. So even here, we have a couple of options available to us. One is a dedicated mission where we are in the only customer, something like the ISRO Small Satellite Launch Vehicle (SSLV), or something like a ride share mission where we share the payload with other customers, something like the SpaceX Falcon 9 mission, which happens on a regular basis. So both of these things would influence the pricing that we have access to, but dedicated mission would give us more flexibility in terms of the orbit that we want to go to, or the exact launch timing, something that we would not be able to get in a ride share mission, because the primary customer in a ride share mission kind of gets to dictate the terms there. So it depends on our end customer how much they're willing to pay in terms of getting access to that ride share mission or dedicated mission. But I think we are kind of optimistic in terms of launch vehicles, because so far SpaceX had been the only company who have successfully brought back that booster, that first stage of their launch vehicle from space and landed it precisely and autonomously. But recently, Blue Origin demonstrated the same as well with their larger orbital rocket. So, and we also believe there's one more company from New Zealand called Rocket Lab, who's also going to demonstrate that capability sometime next year. So, all of this is only going to improve the launch vehicle industry as a whole and help improve the pricing, the cost of launch, and then that means we are able to pass on better prices to our customers, our end customers.
In fact, some of the Indian companies are also trying to get into reusability, and that's going to really be in favor of us, because there's going to be immense competition. Who's going to give us the lowest per kg launch cost? So it's interesting times as we move ahead.
Yeah, and by the very nature of this business, I would imagine that eventually your customers will be all around the world and not just necessarily Indian companies.
Absolutely, you got it right. Yeah. In fact, it's like anything which is in orbit is doesn't belong to any particular national airspace, right? I mean, it's there everywhere, and that's why they've denationalized airspace above the Karman line. And by nature of these operations itself, whether it's a customer or whether it is operations, there have been so many instances where ISRO also has launched their satellites from foreign spaceports. And same way, some of the US companies recover their satellites, I mean, the capsules in Australian outbacks. So this industry is such that global cooperation is very, very, I mean, it's at the heart of it. It's at the heart of the operations geography.
Yeah. And one other important thing, Hari, is that in terms of commercial operations, I think we mentioned microgravity research. We mentioned that, okay, there's unique environment and we're able to enable experiments. But I think the other side of things is because end of the day, we are building capability. We are able to come back from point A, which is space, back to point B, which is Earth. End of the day, being a logistics partner, we are able to enable any kind of payload. It doesn't have to be restricted to microgravity research or experiment payloads per se, whether it's in space manufacturing payloads for commercial products that have use cases back on Earth or experiment payloads. We are also able to eventually be a cargo player to either future private space stations or government space stations because we have naturally built that capability and we are able to transport things to and from future commercial low Earth orbit destinations or other destinations outside of low Earth orbit as well. So, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. I want to switch to asking a few questions about your entrepreneurial journey so far, just to capture a little bit about what your learnings lessons have been up until now, the initial years of now building inbound aerospace and building it out of India. Can you give us a sense of what are some things that are sort of top of the mind recall, whether it is challenges or even pleasant surprises? Just think aloud about this.
Yeah, interesting question. Let's see it from two lenses. One is the challenges, and the other is the opportunities. Challenges, a lot is happening in the Indian ecosystem in terms of startups, and we have these young boys becoming billionaires within just passing out. That's how the ecosystem is promoting that kind of economic boost. So at the same time, it also there's everyone jumping into it. So if you see, there's a lot of competition, and a lot of youngsters are once again trying to become startup entrepreneurs. So that becomes a big challenge wherein everyone is trying to rush in. I mean, the figures go like this, especially in our industry, which is space. 6-7 years ago, there were just 2 or 3 startups. That's what chairman in space keeps mentioning. And today there are over 300, 350 startups. So you see the number of people who have moved into this direction of trying to do business or trying to get into these aspects. So that becomes one challenge. The opportunity, on the other hand, is specifically for this industry, is that the government is very supportive with the new space policy coming in, with the new guidelines and procedures for space operations coming in, and the space bill, which is already been tabled but not yet passed. These have contributed to even the venture capitalists trying to foray into this sector rather than the traditional sectors of consumer tech, fintech, and agri-tech, health tech. So many our interactions with investors now is that everyone wants to get a pie of this deep tech, and some of the venture capitalists are also referring to this as leap tech because it is actually beyond deep tech. So it's a very interesting point in time wherein whilst there's competition, there are also a lot of opportunities, whether it is upstream, downstream. Uh, it's a great time to be in this industry at this point. That's my input.
Yeah, and I'd say in terms of pleasant surprise, I mean, so yeah, I think I don't know if you mentioned earlier, but we happen to have three advisors who are retired ISRO scientists. So I think they've been extremely helpful in the amount of knowledge that they've been able to share with us. But and they also happen to be visiting professors here at IIT Madras. That's how we came into contact with them. But I think anywhere where we meet people, whether it's ISRO scientists or members of the in-space community, or whether it's other startups or just general well-wishers who we meet at space conference, I think the amount of people who are encouraging or happy to see what we are trying to build here from India and really giving us that support, I think that was something that was unexpected. I mean, because it is a challenging problem. It takes a long time. It is you probably three of us have to spend many years to see our product go to space and then come back eventually. So I think just recently I mean, we're talking to ISRO scientists who we met out of the blue and saying that they are willing to, because you have a bunch of retired ISRO scientists who have a treasure trove of knowledge who are willing to share it with us without not necessarily expecting some compensation in return. I think that is like very pleasantly surprising to see that okay, there's no, I mean, the correct word, I don't know if it's contempt, or there's no fact that okay, these are youngsters, these brash youngsters who think they can come and do what we took many years to do, but they want to come and do it quickly. That kind of attitude is never there when you talk to these senior ISRO scientists. They're always ready to help and spend how much ever time that is needed to help youngsters like us navigate this difficult journey. But that not only ISRO scientists, that goes to other government officials that we've met as well by trying to deal with the regulatory aspect of things which are very hard. Abhijit mentioned, but yeah, I think all around the board, I think surprised by the attitude that people have towards us and what we're trying to build, and it's definitely encouraging and encouraging us to go at it faster, better, and yeah, maybe definitely achieve our timelines. Yeah.
Yeah. On the software side of things, like for example, in SaaS companies, in the startup world, people often like to talk about having a playbook. Again, in the SaaS context, the whole India to US or cross-border playbook is something that VCs and entrepreneurs talk about as now being well established. Um,
Mhm.
in the case of space sector private startups like Inbound, do you see that emerging now? I mean, some kind of a sort of a standard playbook where certain aspects of the business is much better understood today, and therefore, would that make things a little bit easier for you as well?
Yeah, some of them is the understanding of the longer gestation period to achieve revenue positive is actually moving forward. So initially it was difficult, and that is where we had spoken to multiple investor teams earlier, and the initial challenge was one is making understanding of the technical side of the things, like because this is a newer market as an it's an emerging market that we were looking at it, and that is one aspect of it, and then the other is the understanding that there is a more patience that is required from their side, from as compared other unlike the software companies or software startups where you can actually achieve revenue much more early. This is a longer development time and a higher technical risk is higher. That is need to be understood and appreciated. But the returns once this is phase is completed, it's actually much more immense than the other companies. So in that way, yeah, there was actually initial this one, but it would what we saw ourselves is that this appreciation for uh, longer gestation period during the development phase is actually now becoming more and more common, that they understand that it takes a lot of time and there needs to be a constant support. We might have to raise multiple times before we actually uh, uh, generate the complete revenue. But we have actually some strategies to actually bringing early revenue from some of the subsystems itself by itself. That is what we projected to them, and so that is how what we feel is that actually. But if you coming back to the question of a general playbook, it is, I think the answer would be a standard answer like there is no general playbook. It is all independent pathway that needs to tailor make it to their product, their journey, and that should be my take on it.
Yeah, and here SaaS still carries over. It's just that it's space as a service. But yeah, to continue on Arvind's point, I think uh, for what you mentioned is essentially patient capital that is willing to take that risk to bet on ideas like this, that if the probability of success might be less, but if they do succeed, it really changes the landscape of the industries that can benefit from the idea or the product. So I think to lead that way, or where we were kind of falling behind other countries, were essentially investors like Special, who deep tech investors like Special, who can make those big bold bets. And I think since they started, with ultraviolet and Agnicool back in the late 2010s, I think you've had a lot more VCs who are coming up with their only deep tech thesis, which was not the case just a few years ago. So I think they've shown the way, and now today it is easier for more and more inbounds to get started, at least here in India. There's a long way to go to reach the scale of some of our Western counterparts, but this is a very good start, and we're happy that we started when we did.
Yeah, and that's also another reason of starting now, that the development timeline are decided such that the market is also evolving. So we are kind of building capabilities now, so that we would be ready by the time the market is also evolved. So it will say, the analogy that I always think about is like when the iPhone was released, you were already ready with the app, kind of thing. Kind of an analogy could be looked at, because launch cost is coming down. Multiple, I mean, International Space Station is set soon to be decommissioned. Commercialization of the microgravity research is being is actually is becoming a more reality. So all this leads to rapid launch and on-demand return. So the development work that is needed for these development, taking that into account, the work has to start now. So that is why we also believe that that now is the best time to do this. If we delay it, we will miss the bus for this. So that is how actually the conviction was, this is the correct time to do it. And this was also supported by the favorable government policies, actually, like opening up ISRO testing facilities to private NGEs. And so this all enables or answers the why now question. So yeah.
Yeah, but also getting specifically to your point of the playbook part, Hari, I would still like to maintain that somehow all these deep technologies have got a lot of connection to the US ecosystem. And if you see some of our startups who are a little ahead of us in their journeys, uh, do eventually do end up having some connections with the US ecosystem, either with the Department of Defense or with the US companies there. So the playbook, some of the pages or some of the chapters from the playbook will definitely be centered around US, around Europe, even Australia is emerging now, and more so because of the nature of operations, which is space, there will be a lot of interaction with the other geographies. And there is no, like Arvind said, there is no set playbook. Everyone will have to, find out different path for themselves. But in our scheme of things, we do hope that eventually we'll have to have a lot of interactions with the other geographies.
Okay. If you were to throw the story forward 5 years down the line, and definitely 10 years down the line, and Vishal, since you mentioned space as a service, that caught my attention. Can you all talk about the inbound aerospace company that you would like to see, a decade from now?
Yeah. So the immediate use case that was already been discussed was the microgravity research. Leading up to that point, it's also we also position ourselves as this platform could be used to test technologies in orbit. So that is what actually we see in the ISRO's upper stage or POEM platform, where a component that needs to be tested in the space environment is tested in that upper stage of the vehicle but cannot be brought back, and not many PSLVs fly a year. So this is something that is also being initially looked at, which is you can use this spacecraft for even doing zero gravity research. In addition to that, you can also do testing of components in space environment, and then you can bring it back, you can analyze, and then so that is one aspect. In orbit testing, technology demonstration, microgravity research, and in space manufacturing is already being talked of. We would want to position grow even more bigger than that into cargo transport into commercial space stations or orbital destinations in the thing. So that is where our decision choices on having low G re-entry while coming the re-entering back from the Earth, even fragile payloads can be brought back. This enables us to look into even sending cargo to and fro to a space station. We go in a rocket, but the carrying the cargo that needs to be taken to a orbiting station. It could be a private space station, it could be Indian space station, and this is in the 2030 2035 time frame. We would want to actually be a major player in the cargo or cargo logistics part of it, and then moving that also we would want to enter into the crewed or manned logistics or manned transport. Bringing back human persons from an orbiting destination, and that is where actually it also evolves into space tourism, which is what the initial we had that also has a dream, where we would want to actually have a one orbit around the Earth kind of a tourism. So you launch from Shar, you go around the Earth, you can actually come back and land in the same country, taking a 90-minute ride around the Earth kind of a tourism, which is also addresses the lower amount of preparation times needed. That is also a decision that we have taken, that the preparation time for this kind of a space tourism need to be reduced. Currently, it's a very extensive preparation is needed for them to train for even for a few minutes space experience. So that is also something that we would want to. So all this are based on the design decisions that we have taken. So currently, it looks like we are only building the capability for all this thing, and the key capability in this is on-demand and gentle re-entries and precision landing. So this is the key thing that underlies, and it can bring back the fact that you can bring back biopayloads means you are maintaining the environment that these biopayloads can survive. It can even be kept in the ambient temperature, whatever temperature that is comfortable to the thing. So you can actually bring back even humans back. So cargo, transitioning that into a manned or a crewed missions is what actually we are looking at.
Yeah, and I think that point of time, 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years down the line, we have multiple numbers of our spacecraft continuously orbiting around the Earth. There's simultaneous landings happening in different parts of the world, probably even different sizes of our spacecraft catering to different use cases. There's a cargo, there's a research, there's another, there's different types of spacecraft serving different purposes all around the world. And I think a nice like goal or dream that I would like to see is I have an app called Flight Radar on my phone. So whenever there's a flight passing above me, I like to see track that flight on that app called Flight Radar, and I can see that okay, this It's an aeroplane traveling from Hyderabad to currently landing in Chennai. And eventually, when we have multiple spacecraft orbiting around the Earth and multiple landing in different places around the world, anybody who sees this object streaking through the atmosphere can open the app and then see, okay, this is inbound spacecraft making a landing here at Chennai Airport among all the other aircraft that are coming into land. So that would be a nice thing to see 10 years down the line.
That's it for today. You can find links to the bios of Aravind, Vishal and Abhijit as well as Inbound's website in the show notes. If you're an aspiring founder in India, especially in space tech, do look them up. I'll be back with another episode of Speciale Focus. Until then, it's goodbye from me, Hari Arakli. Thank you for joining us.